What if I told you the UFC's biggest fights aren't just decided in the cage? That behind the knockouts, weigh-ins, and scorecards, there's a shadow game at play. A game of secret deals, sudden rule changes, and moments so perfectly timed they feel scripted. Tonight, we're pulling apart the theories fans whisper about when the cameras stop rolling. From suspicious scales, to scorecards that make no sense, to the money trails nobody's supposed to see. Some of these stories are backed by real evidence. Others live only in the shadows. But one thing's for sure, once you hear them all, you'll never watch the Octagon the same way again. The new testing era. Let's start with the one thing every fighter is supposed to fear, the drug test. For nearly a decade, the UFC trusted one name, USADA. Love them or hate them, they were the outside watchdog, the people who could show up at a fighter's house at 6 a.m., knock on the door, and demand a sample. Then in 2024, it all ended quietly, suddenly, and with more questions than answers. The UFC announced they were cutting ties and moving to a brand new in-house program run by Combat Sports Anti-Doping, USADA, with collections handled by Drug Free Sport International. They promised the same rules, the same banned substances, the same random visits. They even brought in a big name, George Pirro, a former FBI special agent famous for interrogating Saddam Hussein, to give the new system credibility. But here's the problem. USADA didn't leave smiling. They publicly said they were disappointed, warning that fighters had lost a truly independent safety net. And for hardcore MMA fans, that sounded like a red flag, because now the UFC isn't just promoting the fights, they're also managing the testing. It's like the referee owning one of the teams. From that moment, theories exploded. It'll be easier to look the other way. Stars will get special treatment. The guy selling the tickets won't suspend the guy filling the seats. And the timing didn't help. Some fighters returned from long layoffs looking more muscular, more explosive, and somehow faster. To the conspiracy crowd, that wasn't training. That was chemistry. Now, to be fair, the new program has already made some catches. Just months into its launch, Khamzat Chimaev was suspended for 6 months after testing positive, traced back to what was ruled a contaminated supplement. It proved the system could still bite. But here's the thing. Catching someone once in a while isn't enough to erase suspicion. Not when the people in charge have millions riding on certain fighters staying active. And that's the tension that fuels this theory. On paper, the UFC's testing program is airtight. In the minds of doubters, it's a locked door with the key still in the promoter's pocket. Judging whiplash. If drug testing decides who's allowed to fight, judging decides who gets to win. And if there's one thing guaranteed to set the internet on fire, it's a scorecard that doesn't match what the audience just saw. Every UFC fan has lived this moment. The final horn sounds, the stats appear on screen, and one fighter clearly landed more shots, controlled the pace, maybe even scored takedowns. Yet somehow, the other guy's hand gets raised. That's when Twitter goes nuclear and the word rigged starts trending. Take UFC 280, Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley. In the eyes of most media outlets and fight analysts, Yan edged the bout. He landed more significant strikes, controlled more the octagon, and many saw him dictating the fight's rhythm. But 2 of the 3 official judges gave the nod to O'Malley in a split decision. The reaction? Immediate outrage. Fighters like Kabib couldn't believe it. Fans called it a gift, WWE-style booking, even the death of credibility. And this isn't an isolated case. There's UFC 310, where Alexander Volkov lost a close decision to Cyril Gane and accused one judge, Adelaide Byrd, of blatant incompetence. The same judge who years earlier scored the Canelo GGG boxing match so wildly off that it was called Scandal. When names like that pop up on MMA scorecards, it feeds the theory that certain judges have patterns, and those patterns aren't random. Now, officially, judging is handled by independent athletic commissions, not the UFC itself. There's no smoking gun of bribes or backroom deals. But here's the fuel. The fighters who seem to benefit most from these razor-thin calls are often the ones with the brightest star power, the bigger followings, the better pay-per-view pull. That doesn't mean corruption, but to a suspicious fan, it sure feels like coincidence is working overtime. And the stats don't always help. Sometimes the numbers on screen are misleading. Sometimes judges weigh different criteria heavily. And sometimes you just have to wonder if they were watching the same fight you were. The UFC will tell you that judging is subjective. Fans will tell you that subjective sound a lot like flexible. And when scorecards keep breaking in favor of the UFC's most marketable names, one question keeps echoing. Are we watching a sport or a product being carefully managed for maximum profit? Weight cut chaos, and was it staged? If scorecards can tilt the outcome after the fight, weight cuts can rewrite the card before it even begins. And no single weigh-in in recent memory has thrown the UFC into more chaos than UFC 279. The plan was simple: Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz in the main event. Weeks of build-up, media hype, trash talk, and then, just 24 hours before fight night, Chimaev steps on the scale. Not a pound over, not 2, 7.5 pounds over the limit. In MMA, that's not a miss, that's a free fall. Within hours, the entire main card was ripped apart and reassembled like a jigsaw puzzle. Diaz was now facing Tony Ferguson. Chimaev got Kevin Holland. Everyone's game plan was gone. And here's where the internet lost its mind. Fans didn't just call it bad luck, they called it a setup. They told him to miss weight. Some said it's all scripted to sell more tickets. Social media lit up with claims that the UFC wanted to reshuffle the matchups for maximum drama, and that the scale fail was part of the plan. Dana White? He didn't just deny it. He torched the idea, called it fucking stupid, said Chimaev's body locked up mid-cut, that doctors made the call to stop him from losing any more weight. Even explained that pushing him further could have landed him in the hospital. To the UFC, it was an emergency they handled on the fly. To the skeptics, it was still too perfect. The bad guy versus the fan favorite got replaced with matchups that seemed almost tailor-made to please the crowd. Asterisk. Eyewitness accounts supported the official story. Chimaev reportedly fell ill, cramped up, and had to be pulled. The doctors confirmed it. The fights went ahead, and the crowd went wild. But here's the truth about conspiracy theories. They don't need proof to survive. They just need enough what if to keep people talking. And after UFC 279, one question still lingers in the minds of many. Was it a genuine weight cut disaster, or the most chaotic marketing stunt the UFC's ever pulled? The Kabib scale moment. If UFC 279 was a storm, the Kabib weigh-in was lightning caught on camera. It happened at UFC 254. The stakes? Huge. Khabib Nurmagomedov was about to defend his lightweight title, and every ounce mattered. The moment plays out in seconds. Khabib steps on the scale. The official glances down, slides the beam across, and almost instantly calls out 155.0, the number every lightweight dreams of hitting. But to eagle-eyed viewers, something didn't add up. Slow the footage, frame by frame, and you'll see it. The beam doesn't settle. It's still moving when the call is made. Enter Mike Dolce, a respected weight cut coach. He called the moment disturbing, claiming the official swiped the scale before it stopped, possibly shaving off a fraction of a pound. In a division where 155.1 means you don't fight for the belt, that fraction could be everything. Dolce even suggested Khabib might not have actually made the limit if the beam had been left to rest. The Nevada Commission? They stood by the result. Officially, Khabib was on weight. His camp laughed off the accusations, saying the cut was smooth, even easy. But that's the thing with moments like this. They live in the space between what we see and what we're told. And every time fans rewatch the clip, that tiny flicker of doubt gets just a little bigger. For Khabib supporters, it's a nothing burger, a technicality with zero bearing on the fight. For the conspiracy crowd, it's proof of a bigger system that protects certain fighters when the stakes are high. Because if you think about it, how many weigh-ins aren't streamed live? How many calls are made behind closed doors? And if one can slip by on camera, what happens when nobody's watching? Khabib went on to dominate that night, retiring undefeated. But to some fans, the legacy has a tiny asterisk, not for what happened in the Octagon, but for what might have happened on the scale. Money, monopolies, and star power. If the scale can spark controversy over a fraction of a pound, imagine what happens when the numbers have 6 or 7 zeros after them. Because in the UFC, money doesn't just talk, it decides who fights when they fight, and sometimes who's still on the roster after the dust settles. Here's a number that stunned a lot of fans when it came out in court documents. While other major sports leagues share about 50% of their revenue with athletes, the UFC's fighter share has been calculated as low as 18.6%. That figure didn't come from a random blog. It surfaced in an antitrust lawsuit where former fighters accused the UFC of running a near monopoly that kept pay artificially low. In mid-2024, that case made headlines when a judge rejected a proposed $335 million settlement. Translation: the court wasn't satisfied, and the fight over fighter pay was far from over. By 2025, new lawsuits were piling up, with fresh claims that the UFC's market dominance lets it control not just contracts, but careers. Why does this matter for conspiracies? Because Because when a handful of fighters bring in the lion's share of pay-per-view buys, the temptation to protect those assets is enormous. Think about it. If a star like Conor McGregor or John Jones pulls in millions every time they step into the cage, are you really going to risk them losing momentum over a bad matchup or a suspension? From a cold business perspective, protecting stars isn't corruption, it's asset management. But to the conspiracy crowd, this is the smoking gun. They see questionable matchmaking, suspicious scorecards, and sudden rule flexibility as part of the same machine, one designed to keep the cash cows fat and healthy. And when you add in the fact that the UFC's finances are mostly private, the mystery deepens. Without a public breakdown of revenue, the missing millions become a blank canvas for the wildest theories. Secret bonuses, under-the-table deals, golden handshake payoffs. The UFC insists that every fighter is treated equally and that pay is based on market value. Critics say that market value is just code for we'll take care of our favorites. And every time a superstar gets fast-tracked to a title shot or returns from controversy straight into a main event, that belief grows stronger. Because in the fight business, the cleanest knockout you'll ever see is money knocking common sense right out of the ring. Influence from abroad. If money can tilt the playing field, political power can flip it completely. And in the UFC, few stories blur the line between sport and politics like the influence of Ramzan Kadyrov. Kadyrov isn't just the head of Chechnya. He's a figure accused by multiple governments and human rights groups of severe abuses. Yet in MMA, he's the man behind Octagon MMA, a state-backed fight club that bankrolls fighters with salaries, training camps, medical care, and, in some cases, luxury cars. Fighters connected to his circle, including UFC star Khamzat Chimaev, have openly acknowledged receiving gifts like multiple Mercedes-Benz vehicles. We're not talking rumors. We're talking interviews, photos, videos. Critics call it sports washing, using athletic success to polish the image of a regime accused of brutality. Supporters see it as nothing more than generosity toward athletes from his homeland. But here's where the unease creeps in. When your career, your paycheck, and maybe even your personal safety are tied to a political strongman, how free are you to say no? The optics get even more complicated when you see high-profile UFC names, from Kabib Nurmagomedov to Fabricio Verdum, training in Akhmet gyms, posing for photos, or attending Kadyrov's lavish events. For conspiracy theorists, this isn't casual networking. It's influence. It's leverage. And when those same fighters win big on the world stage, the theory writes itself. Political capital is being traded in the shadows of the Octagon. The UFC has never been caught in any direct wrongdoing here. But to critics, even the appearance of political entanglement can cast a long shadow over the sport. Because in combat sports, power doesn't just come from fists and footwork. It comes from who's in your corner. And when your corner happens to be a geopolitical player, every victory, every title, every stare down start to look like part of a much bigger game. In the end, whether you see this as strategic networking or something far darker, depends on how much faith you have that the fight business is only about fighting. For many fans, that faith is already hanging by a thread. The classics, grease, paper records, and a flying kick. Not every UFC theory is about money or politics. Some are just so strange they've become part of MMA folklore and still make you wonder, what if? Greasegate, UFC 94. BJ Penn accuses Georges St-Pierre's corner of rubbing Vaseline on his body to make him harder to clinch. The commission wipes him down, lets the fight stand. Years later, Dana White says he's 100% sure it happened. Officially, minor infraction. Unofficially, a legend was born. The vanishing record. Askar Mazarov arrives with an impressive win, lost tally, until media exposes aliases and missing losses. His record flips, he loses, gets cut, and his promos vanish like he never existed. The Showtime Kick conspiracy. Anthony Pettis runs up the cage, lands the most replayed kick ever. Fans claim Henderson tapped his foot as a secret signal. Both deny it, but when a knockout looks that cinematic, people start imagining scripts. That's the magic and the danger of UFC conspiracies. Well, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. There's always more behind the scenes in the Octagon.